On February 15, 1997, Chevy Chase made his final Saturday Night Live appearance. By the end of that night, he had been permanently barred. He struck a female group member at the start. They then made sexual remarks. His worst moment wasn't even that. Cast members began to depart as he arrived. He was not permitted to collaborate with directors. To avoid him, one resigned as director of Christmas Vacation. He was beaten up by a child on the highway in 2018 who didn't know who he was. It was no longer cool to be around the person who always made others laugh. On October 8, 1943, Chevy Chase was born Cornelius Crane Chase. He was immediately encircled by wealth and influence. His adopted grandfather was Cornelius Vanderbilt Crane, so he had a clear connection to the well-known Vanderbilt family. That family became one of the wealthiest and most well-known in America in the 1800s because to railroads and shipping. Because of this, Chase was raised in a well-known, influential, and affluent household. His private life will soon tell a completely different tale, despite all the glitz. Even if he later grinned on stage, his inner turmoil and problems as a young man presented a far harsher tale. The origin of his name, Chevy, has nothing to do with American railroads. His grandmother chose it because it told the narrative of a bloody fight between English and Scottish forces in the 1400s, known as the Ballad of Chevy Chase. Chase's relatives were part of the Douglas family that participated in that well-known border conflict. The song was so popular that it inspired the creation of the Chevy Chase area outside of Washington, D.C. His grandmother associated him with a long line of courage and power by referring to him as Chevy. There was more to the moniker than a clever pun. He felt proud to be Scottish because of his long family history. Outside of that wealthy environment, life wasn't as ideal as it appeared. Chase's parents divorced when he was just 4 years old, leaving him without a secure home. His husband and mother mistreated him, which made matters worse. For hours, they would lock him in closets and beat him. They were genuinely upset by what they did. Chase discussed this in interviews and his autobiography, shocking many who only knew him as a humorous celebrity. He carried that pain into adulthood, which altered his social interactions. It demonstrated how great wealth may conceal excruciating suffering. Additionally, there were both intelligent people and turmoil at school. Chase attended some of the top schools, including Riverdale Country School in New York, but he was frequently expelled for misbehavior. Still a bit of a rebel, he went on to become Stockbridge School's valedictorian. At Haverford College, he made a joke that was so outrageous that it was made into a school legend. Because he kept a cow in his college apartment, he got expelled. Every win was accompanied by some adversity. Years later, before humor took over his life, you could see that freewheeling, irreverent energy on comedy television. Music was his first love. Chase performed keyboards and drums for the Bard College Jazz Ensemble Leather Canary. Walter Becker and Donald Fagen, his companions, would later establish Steely Dan. Even then, Chase was shrewd and astute. Playing with future rock artists taught Leather Canary timing and beat, and he had a lot of energy and style. His sense of rhythm would make him one of America's greatest comics. Chase was a part of Channel One, a daring new comedy troupe in New York in 1967. They were not performing the usual skits. Rather, they screened short, humorous films on multiple TVs at their tiny theater on East 60th Street. Channel One's comedy was frequently risque, vulgar, and aggressive. At the time, there wasn't much humor, but this one was novel. In 1974, the most well-known Channel One sketches were combined to create the film The Groove Tube. It was directed by Ken Shapiro, a co-founder. The film barely cost $200,000, but it made over $9 million. A phony news desk item served as the basis for Saturday Night Live's well-known Weekend Update. A few years before Saturday Night Live, in 1973, Chase launched the National Lampoon Radio Hour. The show included some of the greatest comedians of the era, including Harold Ramis, Christopher Guest, Bill Murray, Gilda Radner, and John Belushi. Every week it was played. Their quick-witted, incisive entertainment altered American laughter for years. Even though the show was cut to 13 episodes because it went too slowly, the majority of the cast was hired for Saturday Night Live after the show. The main attraction was Chase. He became a star that same year when he co-wrote and acted in National Lampoon's off-Broadway success, Lemmings. The show parodied the Woodstock event as Woodshock, 3 Days of Peace, Love, and Death. Rock legends like John Denver and Bob Dylan were performed by the entire group, which included Christopher Guest and John Belushi. Chase sung and played drums. It received excellent reviews. Time magazine appreciated the show's humorous rock music parodies, and the show's popular tunes were later released as an album. Before most people recognized Chase, he was penning humor for Mad magazine. He wrote the joke in 1970 and it was about Mission Impossible. John Cullen Murphy created the artwork. They sold millions of copies of that issue. Being a part of Mad was cool. The magazine was at its peak, with writers like Andy Griffith and Charles Schultz. Receiving an invitation to Mad's renowned trip for great authors was even more significant than having your work published there. It rained all night in Los Angeles in the spring of 1975. Chevy Chase wasn't a household name at the time. He was standing in line to watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail at the Paramount Theater. At the Los Angeles Film Festival, he was the talk of the town. Chase decided to do what he did best, make people laugh. He performed for the audience and cracked jokes. Nearby, a Canadian director named Lorne Michaels was seeking participants for a brand new late-night comedy program. Chase slid and landed in a large puddle after falling into a hole. Water was dripping off him, but he continued to chuckle. Dick Ebersol, an NBC manager, overheard Michaels say, "How could you say no to someone so crazy as to do that?" After noticing this, Michaels invited Chase to the Chateau Marmont for a meeting. Because of that wet day, he was hired as a performer and writer for a new show that would soon become Saturday Night Live. When Saturday Night Live debuted on October 11, 1975, Chase was selected to present the fake news segment. Chase infused the novel concept with his own flair. Every week on Weekend Update, he delivered the news with a serious expression and witty remarks. "I'm Chevy Chase, and you're not," soon gained popularity. After all these years, people continue to wear it on their shirts. When Chase concluded a program with "Good night and have a nice tomorrow," people seemed to know what the joke was about, even though many of his gags were intended to parody significant subjects, such as "General Francisco Franco is still dead." Chase also gained notoriety for his portrayal of President Gerald Ford during that season. On June 1, 1975, Ford slipped as he disembarked from Air Force One in Salzburg, Austria. That was something Chase joked about. In the fourth episode of Saturday Night Live, which aired on November 8, 1975, Chase started portraying Ford as a clumsy president who fell over everything. Every time Ford took the stage, Chase would slam into furniture, strike his head, and leap up, all the while saying, "No problem. No problem." Chase never made an effort to mimic Ford's voice. Instead, he portrayed him as someone who was always falling. Although Ford himself found the cartoons humorous, they permanently tarnished his reputation as a lousy president. Chase's talent was evident to all. After just one season, he received 2 Primetime Emmys in 1976. There was one for performing and one for writing. He also received a Golden Globe for his screenplay. He was named the funniest person in the U.S. by New York Magazine in 1975. He was even hinted to by NBC that he would eventually replace Johnny Carson as a guest host on The Tonight Show. Because he transformed the humor and style of SNL in a single season, Chase was later ranked by Rolling Stone as one of the 10 most significant figures on the show. But despite all of this success, Chase decided to depart SNL. He performed for the last time on October 30, 1976. The first actor to ever resign was him. Many were perplexed as to why someone would quit after exerting so much effort. It was about money, which Chase ridiculed. A substantial sum of money. But the truth was more complicated. He had a deep affection for the actress Jacqueline Carlin. According to Chase, "I left for a girl I loved." Chevrolet Chase became to fame as a girl who wouldn't leave California. He co-starred with Goldie Hawn in the comedy thriller Foul Play in 1978. It was his first significant role. Only 2 years prior, Chase had been on Saturday Night Live. However, this film altered everything. Foul Play was very popular. That was more than $44 million back then, which was a lot of money. The film also received 7 Golden Globes. Chase had a chance to win Top Performance. It was an unexpected and abrupt rise. The film depicted a bizarre plot to assassinate the Pope and featured both humorous and frightening moments. Critics came in all shapes and sizes, but they all had one thing in common. From the beginning, Chase was a star. A charming dude with a sense of humor. Interestingly, Chase's career took a completely different route when he declined a role in Animal House to work on Foul Play. The film was so popular that it even inspired a brief television series in 1981. He gained international recognition thanks to the film Foul Play, which served as the perfect springboard for 10 years of successful comedies. But behind the scenes, people were starting to witness a more rugged side of Chevy Chase. In the 1980 film Caddyshack, Chase portrayed the suave and easygoing golfer Ty Webb. He nearly failed to make the film. When the corporation sought a major star to star in the film, Chase was the first person they considered. Despite costing $6 million to produce, it made nearly $40 million in the US alone. It was a wild and bold film. Like its characters, Chase had a nice, smooth style and some great one-liners. Despite initial negative reviews, Caddyshack became one of the most well-known comedies ever made. Chase's spontaneously created scenes with Bill Murray were hilarious. The film, which was also Harold Ramis's debut as a director, helped establish a new comedy genre. When Caddyshack 2 came out in 1988, Chase was the only well-known performer to return. Ty Webb is regarded as one of the most memorable characters in comedy, and people continue to quote from the film. One of Chase's most well-known roles was that of Clark Griswold in National Lampoon's Vacation, 1983. Over $61 million was earned by the film. It was inspired by one of John Hughes's stories. Chase portrayed a father who merely desired to enjoy a wonderful vacation with his family. The fact that everything went wrong was a joke. Clark's goofy yet well-meaning manner was adored by the public. Due to the character's popularity, 4 further films featuring them were produced, including the $71 million Christmas Vacation, 1989. In total, the series earned about $322 million. After 40 years, people continue to make fun of Clark Griswold and his mishaps. In the US, the films are now widely recognized. Chase also demonstrated his ability to repeatedly make the same character humorous. By the late 1980s, Chase was earning $7 million a film, or roughly $15 million in today's currency. He was now on par with the top action and drama stars in Hollywood. Since of his appearances in films like Fletch and Christmas Vacation, he had a lot of authority. Studios also allowed him artistic license since they knew his name would draw viewers. At the same time, however, his reputation as a difficult person to get along with started to spread. Chase was demanding on set, and they frequently argued about billing and themes. As much as people spoke about his jokes, they also talked about his enormous ego. The disparity was odd. In public, he made people laugh, but behind the scenes, not everyone shared his laughter. In Fletch, Chase displayed another aspect of his acting abilities by portraying a shrewd undercover journalist who was always prepared with a joke. Fletch made $60 million worldwide after its 1985 release. The production cost was $8 million. Chase created a lot of the character's better elements on the spot, including making up names as he went along. Reviewers praised Chase's comedic timing and praised the way the mystery and comedy were interwoven. He reprised the character in 1989 in Fletch Lives, which was one of his most famous roles. Hollywood attempted to revive Fletch years later. But because the figure was so closely associated with Chase, it never completely worked. Fletch is regarded as one of the greatest and funniest thrillers ever made, even after many years have passed since its release. However, there was a downside to happiness. Because of Chase's rapid ascent to prominence, John Belushi and Chase were at odds back on Saturday Night Live. Belushi believed Chase was stealing the show because he was already well known. Everyone heard him describe Chase as arrogant and difficult to deal with. Their altercation became widely known after Belushi ridiculed Chase on live television. On a well-known night in July 1976, Belushi and Chase pretended to fight at a cold open. They were genuinely venting all of their tension on tape in what appeared to be a joke. After just one season, Chase left Saturday Night Live due to the depressing atmosphere. When Chase returned as a guest host in February 1978, that tension remained. Chase's replacement in the group, Bill Murray, was furious. Murray thought Chase was too conceited and had left SNL too soon. They fought and began criticizing each other backstage. Murray ordered Chase to go sleep with his wife. Chase retaliated by mocking Murray's face. The altercation became so bad that punches were thrown in John Belushi's dressing area. Billy Joel, who was a guest, and other members of the group watched. Belushi, Doyle, and Murray had to intervene and keep them apart. Chase had to return to the stage as if nothing had happened after a few minutes. Everyone in the group was afraid. They claimed that it was like a family quarrel that left everyone feeling anxious and depressed. After Terry Sweeney became the first cast member to come out as gay in 1985, Chase treated him cruelly. There was a great deal of fear and misinformation regarding AIDS in those days. Sweeney, playing an AIDS-afflicted persona who was measured weekly to check for weight loss, struck Chase as amusing. It was an extremely unpleasant idea. This wasn't an isolated incident. Chase would also say to Sweeney, "Oh, you're the gay guy, right?" followed by nasty remarks like, "You can start by licking my balls." It continued to happen. The workplace was really toxic. It took SNL over 2 years to hire another out homosexual male cast member, and Sweeney only had one season. When Chase was finally told to apologize, he didn't feel sorry at all. Afterwards, Sweeney said that Chase was furious at being held responsible and showed no remorse for his actions. It wasn't finished yet. On February 15, 1997, Chase returned to Saturday Night Live as a guest presenter, but the experience wasn't good. He immediately struck Cherot in the back of the head during practice. He was immediately thrown off balance by Lorne Michaels, the show's director. Physical violence was not the only thing occurring. On the show, Chase also made offensive jokes and sexually suggestive remarks about women, which was unacceptable. Will Ferrell claimed that the entire situation was horrible because he witnessed it. Chase's deliberate targeting of women was the worst thing he did. Cherot later said that everyone wished they had simply left. He said to one female journalist, "Maybe you can give me a hand job later." However, they were too startled at the time. The atmosphere was hostile and uncomfortable, and Chase showed no concern for his coworkers. Chris Columbus had been slated to helm National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation as early as 1989. He wanted to leave his imprint because he was a rising star at the moment. However, everything changed as he met Chevy Chase for the first time. Later, Columbus would describe the encounter as the most bizarre and absurd thing he had ever encountered. He prepared to discuss how he thought the film was progressing. However, Chase didn't even look at him during the nearly 40 minutes that he sat there still. Then, out of the blue, Chase offered an odd question. Columbus said, "Wait a minute. You're the director?" It was as simple as Chase saying, "Oh, I thought you were a drummer." The meeting was over. Chase simply got up and said, "I have to go." Columbus was astonished and furious. They attempted to eat dinner together once more, but this time with novelist John Hughes, but the attempt failed miserably. It wasn't simply that they didn't get along, the actor informed Hughes, "This is really hard for me, but I can't do this movie with Chevy Chase." Columbus believed Chase was horrible, thus he didn't want to work with him. At the time, it was dangerous to leave. Columbus really needed a hit following the failure of his previous film, Heartbreak Hotel. Hughes provided him 2 fresh scripts after accepting his selection. Reach the Rock was the title of one, but he had little interest in it. It was Home Alone. Columbus immediately sensed a connection. He became one of Hollywood's most well-known directors fairly fast when the film Home Alone earned over $476 million worldwide. It served as the inspiration for both the novel and the first two Harry Potter films. His career might not have peaked if he had stayed on Christmas vacation. Meanwhile, Chase's reputation continued to deteriorate. In the 1980s and 1990s, people remarked about how difficult it was to work with him. Directors and producers began to avoid him. According to Columbus, he wasn't the only one who couldn't cooperate with him. Chase refused to collaborate with his co-workers, was impolite to them, and even got into arguments with co-stars like Bill Murray on the Saturday Night Live set. Chase was so famous by then that a lot of producers refused to collaborate with him at all. His situation began to deteriorate. Memoirs of an Invisible Man, 1992, Cops and Robersons, 1994, and Nothing But Trouble, 1991, were among the poorly received films, earning a total of just $34 million. For a former major comedic star, it's a dismal number. Nothing But Trouble, according to Chase himself, was the worst film he had ever produced. The Chevy Chase show followed, but it was a complete flop. In 1993, Fox placed a large wager that he could transform a theater into the Chevy Chase Theater, drawing in 5 to 6 million viewers each night. It was awful for the numbers, though. Less than 3 million people initially watched, and by the end of its brief run, no more than 2 million did. At the moment, Chase felt disoriented and tense. Additionally, because Chase failed to engage the audience or the guests, Entertainment Weekly awarded the show a failing grade. Nobody wanted to show up. After just 5 weeks, Fox terminated the show because viewers had stopped watching. Within 48 hours, the large sign was painted over. Chase later declared that he would never do the show again because it was too restrictive. Chevy Chase was never one to hold back. On the Community set, things became really awful and weren't humorous at all. Donald Glover was one of the smartest men there. Chase was aware of that. But rather than praising him, Chase continued to disparage him. It was more than a casual remark. They were frequently racist and cruel. At one point, he said to Glover, "People think you're funnier because you're black." At other times, he would wait for Glover to hear him in between takes. Glover kept the noise low, but the weight of it was obvious to everybody. It was also seen by the show's creator, Dan Harmon. Chase's remarks, in Harmon's opinion, were not arbitrary. Their actions were motivated solely by jealousy. Harmon informed The New Yorker that Chase was the first to recognize Glover's uniqueness. Instead of encouraging him, Chase attempted to trip him up. Harmon apologized to Glover several times. Glover would dismiss it, but Harmon recognized what was happening. He was upset because, after years of being a celebrity, he couldn't accept that his time was running out and he was seeing someone else become famous. Then the N-word was said. That statement came out loud and clear one day while Chase was venting about his character. All were present when it happened. Nicole Yvette Brown departed because she was so furious. They decided she wouldn't come back until Chase was gone. He left the lot in a matter of hours. The authors were eager to eradicate him. He had finished it. That was the end of the show. At the Season 3 wrap celebration, everyone had a lot to say. Harmon decided to say it with them. With Chase's wife and children present, Harmon led a boisterous chant that nearly everyone joined in, F********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************* behavior they had endured for years. Chase heard it all. "You were unable to conceal." It was followed by the voicemail. Chase sent Harmon a lengthy, irate mail after everything. He put down his work, called him all sorts of derogatory names, and even expressed the hope that he would pass very soon due to his eating habits. Harmon's comedy program played the message. It was a low blow, too, ensuring that everyone was aware of the true severity of the fight. By the time Chase was formally fired, everyone was exhausted. He was entirely ridden out by the producers. He would not appear in any further scenes, Brown made plain. This was a highly public fire, not just a firing. Years later, when the community group reconnected online for a table read, they selected the episode concerning Pierce's passing. Chase was not invited. They didn't even mention him. Despite that, he continued on. Even at 74, Chase was unstoppable. He pursued a pickup truck on I-87 close to the Governor Mario M. in February 2018. The bridge over Cuomo. He thought they had struck him. Things went awful when they stopped. He was cursed at by a young man named Michael Landrio. Chase returned fire. Landrio kicked him and he fell to the ground. Later, Landrio admitted to the police that he had never met Chase. He needed to search for him on Google. Despite everything, Chase remained the same. In 2022, when CBS questioned him about his image, he spoke the truth. In his own words, "I don't give a crap. That was it. I am who I am." Chase never felt the need to change despite being called cruel and difficult to deal with by others. He seemed unaffected by the pain, rage, and destruction.